Hello, I'm FX Toycat, and yesterday the Minecraft community voted and they decided the next new mob they wanted would be the Allay. Congratulations to the Allay for being the 5th mob vote winner. Yes, this is seriously the 5th mob vote, and it's really interesting because most people are congratulating it and saying, yeah, when's the Allay coming? And we'll talk about that, don't get me wrong. However, my first question is, does this mean the Copper Boy is never going to come into the game? Over 500,000 people voted for it, and we're not going to see it. Except maybe we will, because yesterday Minecraft changed the name of the game. They also clarified their exact stance on how, the losers of the mob votes work and when or why we'll see those. And finally, while researching this video, I might have found that maybe Minecraft did something that alters the very principles of democracy and makes you question whether this was really democratic in the first place. But before we can talk about that, let's dive into the first thing today, which is telling you to like the video and maybe subscribe if you like it. And the second thing is therefore the Allay. This is a brand new mob that is actually coming to the game now, and it's very exciting, but you might be thinking, okay, how are they going to add it and when are they going to add it? And interestingly enough, even though they confirmed it was coming yesterday, they haven't given any details yet, and the reason for this is they're going to take some time to workshop it. Obviously, they came up with 3 mob concepts that they wanted in some way, but now they know which one the community wants, they have to do it in the best form possible. They could give you all the details right now, but they probably wouldn't be the final ones, and so here's the question, when will we see the Allay? And the answer is that we don't usually know until they're very late into developing it. However, it tends to be the update after the one they're working on at that time. So they're working on 1.18 right now. It would likely be 1.19 based on how the Phantom came in 1.13 and how the Foxes and all of the Tiger Biome stuff came with 1.14, and of course the Glow Squid came with 1.17. The big outstanding example here is obviously the Mountain Biome. We voted for Snowiest Snow, Goats, and New Mountain Generation in 2019, and we do have Goats and Snowiest Snow as of earlier this year, 2021, and as of the end of this year, we'll get the new mountains. So it could be up to 2 years until we see the Allay, but realistically, I'd imagine, because it's just one mob, we'll see it within the next few months, and it's most likely, therefore, going to be 1.19. We could see them slide it into 1.18 if they get developing fast enough, or we could see them deciding that actually we'll push it back to 1.20. I mean, that is the name of the game right now, pushing things back, and so we don't know for sure which update the Allay will be in, and so it's not a confirmed 1.19 feature, it's just a probable 1.19 feature. So that's very important knowledge until we hear more about it. However, let's move on to the next thing now, because yesterday they announced something pretty cool in my opinion, because we did just have an announcement from Allray. He is a Minecraft developer who confirmed that all of the losing mobs and biomes and everything else that you vote on go back to the idea library. This means they won't come to the game soon, but they might come back in the future. This is how they kind of said things before, but they said, oh yeah, they'll definitely come to Minecraft at some point. They confirmed that no, not every single mob vote that loses will come to Minecraft. I think this is a good thing when it comes to the Glare. The Glare seems to be a universally not liked Minecraft mob, and so in a way this poll is a really great way for them to realize, oh, thank God we didn't put time into developing that thing. Imagine if they put all this effort into the Glare and then they realized people hated it after they'd already done the development work. This has happened before with Minecraft features, and what are you going to do? Are you going to back down and remove the thing you put a ton of time into? Sometimes you're going to have to, but it's not going to feel good, and so it's great that we now have kind of like an opinion poll on how the Glare would react. We're not going to see that anytime soon, but the Copper Golem, on the other hand, which is a mob that of course is pretty well liked by the community, in fact over 500,000 people voted for it, does have a positive future, because yesterday they announced that 1.19 would definitely have a swamp update in it. And so everything we saw in the swamp update, whether it's the boats chests, whether it's the new wood type, or whether it's the frogs, were things that in the large part were actually announced as part of the biome vote of 2019. So 2019's mob vote was one of the closest they ever had, arguably the closest that was ever had, because it was 47% of people voting for the swamp and 53% of people voting for the mountains. My guess is they actually really predicted people would vote for the swamp, because as you can tell, it took them over a year to even announce the mountain update, caves and cliffs, and then it took them a year to deliver that. Again, we're still waiting for that mountain update, but at the exact same time that we're waiting for that, they did also announce 1.19 would be the wild update, and as part of that, they're updating the swamps. This is so interesting to me, because they immediately had this second, biome vote ready to go, and they really are excited to do it, and I think it is a great idea. It is one of the features in the community people love the most, and so ultimately it doesn't really matter why they're adding the boat chests and the new mangrove tree. It's going to be a good thing for Minecraft, so sure, 1.19 the wild update, that's exciting, but something I did decide to do is look into the second place, part of all of the votes, because obviously every Minecon Live for the last 5 years we've had a vote of some form, and besides the first vote where they said they would throw away the mob concepts forever, and I think they do intend to to stick to that word. All of the other ones, they have said that, yeah, we will add the other things eventually, or as Ulref puts it, put them in the idea library. And so now that we've seen the second place, biome vote from 2019 be added, what other options may we be seeing in the future? Because I imagine if they are going to add another option, it will be the last round finisher. And so let's look at all of the mob votes real quick, just in case you're curious. The 2017 mob vote, mob ABCD, came down in the end to just the Phantom and the weird gobbler thing. I forget what it's called. It's cute, but I don't need to know its name because it's not a real mob. But anyway, that came down to mob B and mob C, and it was the closest mob vote they've ever had in terms of percentages, where as you can see, it's 51.6% of people voting for the Phantom. Boo, you've ruined everything forever. Why would you do this? And then 48.4% of people reasonably voting for a cave update, effectively via the cave-based mob. Wow, what great, wonderful human beings they are. But jokes aside, obviously you can see that 2,229 votes were cast, which is incredibly few. This is only 2,200 people taking part in the democratic event to improve and change Minecraft. Yes, for real, that is how it went. But anyway, that means that of the 2,229 people who voted, 0.484% voted for the mob C, which is roughly, if we do the maths, about 1,076 people, and 1,150 people, roughly, voted for the Phantom. This means a raw margin of 75 people. 75 people were the difference between us getting the Phantom, and getting mob C. And you know what? If that's not a reminder of how crazy things are, I don't know what is. So it's really interesting to see that only 2,200 people voted. My guess is that a lot of people didn't have Twitter accounts and just decided not to make one. There were hundreds of thousands of people watching the show, and for some reason, only 1% of them decided to actually vote in it on something that would genuinely change the game, which is really weird and interesting to see. But it gets more interesting when we look at the next year, because the number of votes went up pretty massively. As you can see, it went in the last round down to the Taiga and the Savannah biome, with the Taiga winning by 65.3% to the Savannah's 34.7%, and the Savannah biome coming second by, therefore, tens of thousands of votes. But 54,000 people voted in that poll, and that's a surprising number, which then went up the following year when the Mountains beat the Swamp biome in, again, 228,000 votes total, and then it went up even more the next year when the Glow Squid was decided with 741,000 Twitter users, and then finally we have the, this year, where 1.173 million people voted for the Allay over the Copper Golem. And so even though it looks pretty close, 54.3% to 45%, that's actually a raw difference of about 10%, which is over 100,000 more people voting for the Allay than the Copper Golem. And the reason I'm going through all of these probably boring election stats, basically, is because, first of all, I'm an election nerd, but second of all, I think it's really interesting. The number of voters increased every year, which we're definitely going to circle back around to, but also it's been very close every single year, besides 2018, where the Taiga demolished the Savannah. And so off the second place biome options, which they actually can add, because again, mob A, C, and D were thrown away forever, the Savannah really wasn't loved by that many people. The Taiga won the first round of voting by a lot, and then it won the second round by an even bigger amount. Basically, people wanted the Taiga biome update, and so we have foxes, campfires, and whatnot. People didn't want the Savannah biome update, which would have come with so many delightful things like, ostriches and a baobab tree and termites. For real, they suggested termites as a mob. And so yeah, that's why they ignored that and instead skipped straight to 2019, where obviously the Swamp came second, and they figured, yeah, we're going to add one of these second place mob votes. The Swamp biome is therefore a great place to start. And so with that said, what about 2020's second place? It was the Isolager with 47.3%, which makes me think if they're going to add another second place mob, it's going to be either the Isolager, which did really well and came quite recently, although it would be hostile and it has a whole Minecraft Dungeons connection, or it's going to be the Copper Golem. And so actually, given their track record is now not we've discarded every second place vote, but instead we've just added one out of the four of them, I think that seeing the Copper Golem or seeing the Isolager is actually more likely than you might think, which is good news. I like to see the progress on that front, and now we know that if you're not voting for a mob that you like, it's not going to be discarded forever, just maybe a long time. So that's good news. But the last thing I wanted to dive into here, I'm sorry if it's a bit philosophical, but you might have noticed the massive increase in number of people voting from 2,000 in 2017 all the way up to 1.1 million this year, but the number of people watching the live stream hasn't increased by the same percentage. I mean, if it had increased by the same percentage, we'd have what is 5,000 times hundreds of thousands? It's apparently around 500 million people would have had to watch to get the same conversion ratio from viewers to people voting. So what did they change? Well, first of all, they announced that the vote would be happening on Twitter ahead of time so you could make an account. I mean, they gave you 10 minutes to vote anyway, so if you can't make a Twitter account in 10 minutes, then, you know, should you be voting is maybe a different question for another time. But the other thing here is the fact that also they changed the way they made the tweets. It's really interesting, if you ask me, because obviously, you know, there was a huge increase in voters from year 2, 2018 to year 3, 2019, and, you know, from 55,000 to 200-something thousand, it's massive the number of people they got voting. Maybe you could just argue that people were aware ahead of time. Maybe you could argue that something else is going on there, but something else I noticed is that this year's vote, which got the most ever votes, had 1.1 million people deciding to vote for it, but it says right here, via Twitter for advertisers. And that's interesting. I mean, they tweeted this out from Twitter for advertisers, but if you click on that, according to Twitter's own terms, this is just a tool that advertisers can use. Not every tweet used by Twitter for advertisers is a promotional tweet. And so, of course, it makes sense that actually what Minecraft's doing here is they promote some tweets and they're just doing everything via Twitter for advertisers because that's the platform they're using. However, if you'll notice, every single other thing that Minecraft tweeted out during the show was via something called Sprinkler Publishing. In fact, even just the things they've tweeted out since then come via Sprinkler Publishing, which is some form of tool to allow you to schedule posts and whatnot. It makes sense that they're using that. However, that means they specifically switched to using Twitter for advertisers when they do the mob votes. Again, they use the Twitter web app even as recently as yesterday to announce the winners, but when they're doing the poll itself, they use Twitter for advertisers. It's not, you know, it's not confirmation of anything, but to me that sounds like they do some slight advertising to get more people to vote on the poll. I mean, it is pretty embarrassing for a company that has all of these social values and whatever else, you know, they have going on there to be like, yeah, actually, we have this democratic event once a year where the community decides a vote, and then it's actually about 2,000 Twitter users. That is pretty embarrassing, so maybe they tried to get some more people to vote here. And here's my question, here's the philosophy behind elections and the very concept of democracy. Is that actually so bad? I mean, everyone who voted in the mob vote poll is someone who, you know, therefore decided the future of Minecraft, but should they have been able to be? Should you have a democracy that is based on people who are infused enough to go out there and find it? Again, to go back to my earlier comment, if you can't make a Twitter account in 10 minutes, or you don't care enough about voting to make a Twitter account, should your vote count as much as someone who has, like, been following this all week long, they've considered all the pros and cons of each mob, and they've made the Twitter account ahead of time, they've been spam refreshing for the tweet because they want to have their voice heard? Should your voice matter the same as theirs? Again, interesting democratic question by itself, but more interesting is how wide should your democracy cover? Because presumably, unlike when they advertise their trailers for things, when Minecraft advertised this poll, they probably weren't reaching to the wider gaming audience. But if they did, that wouldn't be correct, right? If they just advertised to anyone with a pulse who was alive and awake during that time and told them to vote between 3 mobs they have no idea about, just so that they can obviously boost their numbers, that wouldn't be a good thing, right? I think everyone can agree with that to some extent, that it's not a great idea to be having people who don't have an interest in something be voting. And so, yeah, it's this really interesting thing of, like, democracy is good. The more people who vote into democracy is good, but when does that have a dripping off effect to where it actually starts to be bad again? Again, should people who have never played Minecraft be able to vote on its future? Maybe not. And yeah, this gut reaction you have right here is interesting. But for now, I just want to say that even though they're using Twitter for advertisers, it doesn't mean they're just advertising to strangers in the same way you get ads for insurance or whatever else, because they, you know, again, when you advertise on social media, they have so much data about you, and the reason they have that data is so people can target things to you, and hopefully Minecraft is just targeting their own followers with this advertised poll, and maybe people who follow Minecraft but don't follow their specific account. That's what I would hope is actually true, and yeah, but it's interesting. Why do I hope that they're doing that? Why does it matter who votes in the poll? Surely the more voters means the more democracy, but let's talk about an interesting idea, right? Because let's take the United States of America, because statistically a lot of you are from there, and also that's where the corporate responsibility side of Microsoft/Minecraft comes from, and also that's a country where there are huge debates about, oh yeah, make sure literally everyone votes. I don't care if you don't have opinions on this election, you better vote in it anyway. And it's an interesting thing, right? Because obviously that is a good stance to have. A democracy is something that has effects on everyone who lives in the US who is of voting age, as well as people who aren't of voting age or voting ability, but it has these effects on those people, so of course they should be having a say in it. However, then do you expand that to people who are in the United States but aren't citizens? You know, they have only been there for a short period of time, or they're not permanently there or whatever else, you know? Like, do they have the same interests in the future of it as you do? And then there's the more interesting thing, which is like, take me, for example. I am not someone who is in the United States presently, and I do not spend most of my time there, but I spend a fairly significant amount of time, despite being, by the grace of the people who are from there. And in fact, the current leadership proposals just to play political games at the expense of people from foreign countries, that does affect me as a non-citizen, right? I can't vote out current president if I really disagree with the European ban, which is still in place to this day, by the way. It's finger-filled soon, but like, I can't vote against that. I don't have any political power against that. Should I have some? And the actual answer you would actually come to is like some form of fractional votes, but in a system where everyone has to have one vote and it's exactly equal, shouldn't those people be the people with the most interest in a society? If you don't really care about what happens in the future, if you didn't care about a vote, the best vote wouldn't be to vote for one of them anyway and just be like, yeah, it's all fine. Wouldn't the best way to say that actually you care about all of them equally, you know, you have, you like all three options and they're all just great to you, to be to not vote and allow people who do have a strong opinion, who would massively prefer the Allay to the Glare, or massively prefer the Glare to the Allay, or whichever way around it is, would it be better to let them be the ones who decide? But that is not the principle we use behind our main democracy, and so it's not the one they've used behind Minecraft democracy, where they actively are promoting the tweet, not just people watching the show at the time, but people who are just on Twitter scrolling through and have some form of interest in Minecraft. Again, technically we can't say that they advertised the tweets, we can just say that the number of people voting every year has massively increased, while the number of people watching hasn't. And you know what, this was just an interesting video to talk about the weird mechanics of democracy, because when people talk about it, they talk about it with their own interests in mind, that like, yeah, of course, the more people who vote, it tends to be that people who don't vote would vote in a certain way, and you can use that to your advantage and, whatnot. Like, if I know that people who don't care about each mob probably would want the copper golem, then I've got to be like, yeah, vote for the copper golem. Whereas if I know that people who don't vote are more likely to vote for the Allay, and I want the copper golem, I'd be like, actually, yeah, just don't vote, and make a whole 17-minute video about how you shouldn't vote unless you really care. And ultimately, isn't that the interesting thing about democracy? That everyone has very different cares, different interests, different stakes. Some people who voted in this poll, statistically, even if they didn't promote it, would have just found that poll via a retweet from someone they know, and been like, go on then, I'll vote for a mob, and all of those votes count equally. And ultimately, though, it has to be said that that is what democracy is. All of those faults are something that make the system so great, and I just wanted to talk about it today because, you know what, it's Sunday. I didn't do a Q&A Saturday yesterday, and so I'm upset. I'm gonna go eat some pie and mash right now. I hope you have a good Sunday, and tomorrow I'm learning to drive. So I won't have a Let's Play out because the world is still going through some weird corruption things. I've got one of the senior Minecraft developers helping me out with it, though. We will be fixed soon, just not in time for tomorrow. So I don't know what's happening then, but I hope you all enjoy this video, and I look forward to seeing the Allay in the next 6 to 24 months, and so should you. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed, because I'll see you all Monday, or Tuesday, or Wednesday. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.